Greetings, East Africa, and thank you for joining us on this episode of Your World. Now, this morning we take time to appreciate being awesomely different. The good book says we are all fearfully and wonderfully made, which means we all stand out as unique. Now, at times, that uniqueness could be having to live with a unique character trait, physical attribute, or health condition, or it could be that life has dealt you cards and your circumstances are not what you hoped they would be today. Whatever the case, this morning we take time to encourage each other through it all and also remind ourselves of how each of us has something unique to offer despite their circumstances. Now, my name is Gladys Gashanja, and this is what else you can expect on this broadcast. Today, we meet several people who are awesomely different. Find out their stories in a few. The exclusion and marginalization of intersex people in the spectrum of human rights needs to be addressed.
She's a true athlete, and so she trains every day.
Caster Semenya is in the European Court of Human Rights to challenge the ban from participating in races. Monkeys in Pradesh, India are making life a living hell for residents as they run amok in the state. Thank you again for joining us on this broadcast. As I mentioned today, we are celebrating being awesomely different. So the question of the day to you this morning is, do you live with a chronic health condition? Could be vitiligo, could be cancer, hyperhidrosis, diabetes. A long list goes with that description. And are you going through a rough patch in life? Who is your support system? Talk to us. That hashtag New Normal on our social media platforms. And of course, you can reach us using those numbers at the bottom of your screen. Before we get to that very interesting conversation, let's take a look at the effects of COVID-19 around the world. And that number this morning stands at 47,847,772 people confirmed to have contracted COVID-19 around the world. Out of that number, 34,355,957 have totally recovered from the same, and we have lost 1,220,260 people to COVID-19. So how does it look like in our country, Kenya? Well, this morning that number stands at 57,093 people who have contracted COVID-19 in the country this far. 37,846 of them have totally recovered, according to the Ministry of Health. And unfortunately, we have lost 1,039 Kenyans to COVID-19. Remember, this is our reality. Both Kenya and the world are facing the second wave of COVID-19. So do take care and take the necessary precautions to protect yourself. Well, before we get to some of the stories that are making headlines around the world this morning, of course, there's one that has caught the attention of the globe, and we're talking about the U.S. presidential election. As you know, President, that is Donald Trump, and former Vice President Joe Biden are going at it, trying to clinch that presidential vote. And this morning, those numbers so far, at least, taking it from the CNN site, stands at Joe Biden at 47.2% of the vote, which translates to loosely 40,819,916 votes against his opponent. That will be Trump at 44,382,373 people, which translates to 51.3% of the vote. As you can tell, the race is very tight. They are going head to head. And if you look at those numbers, actually, it shows some of the states that the polls have closed and the numbers are in. And speaking of which, now that we're taking these numbers from CNN, let's listen in to some of their numbers.
Votes by congressional district, their electoral college votes. So again, especially now, if you're in the Biden campaign and you're thinking, we might not get Florida, we might not get Georgia, we might not get North Carolina. Looks like our dreams of Texas are not going to happen this year. Closer, but close doesn't count. It doesn't get you the electoral votes. If you're at this point in the campaign where normally you think, well, what's one? Guess what? One can matter. And so again, in this scenario, this is a scenario on the board here. So let me just take these away, right? You know, if you can hold this, you're moving closer, right? You're moving closer. That's assuming Virginia flips back. And that's assuming you hold Arizona and Nevada stays. So these are just that would be a change. Donald Trump carried that, and that would be a change. Trump carried that. So that's what you're looking to do. Trump had 306 last time. If you're Biden, you have to subtract from that to get him down below 270. That's one, and that's progress, but these are the big ones. These are the big ones. Again, when you're in the tight part of the campaign, if you think you're going to have that close of a race, and it sure looks like we are, then every one counts. And so this includes the main one up here. So the math gets really interesting. And again, if you can do this, just forget about it. Because if you're doing this, you're most likely doing that, and you're probably doing that. We always knew. Joe Biden said, a lot of Democrats said, focus on the Sun Belt. Joe Biden said, no, I'm going to start here, and then maybe I'll expand. If he can do this, we're going to spend a lot of time, and these ones may take, some of them, again, we may be into tomorrow and beyond. At the moment, we don't know that, though. At the moment, these are to be decided, and that would push, and again, if you come at this from a Republican perspective, I did Joe Biden's math to get him up. Donald Trump's leading here. He's leading here. He's leading here. We expect him to win here. That's his. This one's interesting. We expect him to get this, and these normally would be Trump states out here. Alaska. And Alaska. So, again, we're open to being surprised, but if it plays out, in a traditional map, that's where we're going to be. That's where we'll be as we go to the West Coast, somewhere in that ballpark. This is not an exact science, but somewhere in that ballpark, looking at Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and maybe Iowa, and the one more congressional district there. That's the way the map looks right now, that we're going to have that tense. And we'll see. Sometime, again, we've had some surprises so far, but we haven't had many flips. We've had some tension. We've had back and forth, and we'll see how it goes. Right now, the only flip on the board is Arizona, maybe that congressional district. We're going to count votes, and again, it's fun for us. It's tense. If you're in the campaign headquarters right now, it is really tense.
Both campaigns are very, very nervous right now. But this election is basically different because there's so much early voting that occurred, especially in those blue wall 3 states, and that apparently that early vote, which skews Democratic, has not really been counted yet.
No, and so that's the issue. And I would switch over, and I switch this back. We go through these hypotheticals. It's not to alarm you at home. We go through them. I like to switch it back at the end. So just if you do see it again, you understand where we are, not where we might be. This is where we are in terms of votes. And everything here, this is all real. It's just some of it's not contextual yet because we're waiting. We have pieces of votes, but we're missing pieces of vote. And again, at this point in the night, I don't think a lot of people thought Donald Trump would be leading in the popular vote, but we have a long way to go. But it's significant, 51% to 47%. He's 3 million votes ahead. He's 3 million votes ahead. We don't have any votes from California, the nation's most populous state. So that's going to change. We know that without a doubt. As the West Coast comes in, we know that without a doubt. But we also know, Pennsylvania is not a small state either, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and we have not much in so far. 1.6 to 1.2, just to go back in time. And remember, 2.9, 2.9. We have a long way to go, and turnout is higher this time, right? So this is just shy, this is just shy of 6. You add in, it's just shy of 6 million, and we're not there. We're just not there. And so if you're looking at the map as a Republican, you're grateful that it's red, but it's really early on. We got a long way to go. And again, I'm going to be a broken record here, but we're looking at Northampton County here, maybe 40% of the vote, a little shy of that. You come down here to Bucks County, key suburb just outside of Philadelphia. This is the more conservative of the suburbs in the call around Philadelphia. 12% of the vote, maybe. You come down to Montgomery County, again, big suburban area, absolutely critical to the Democrats. So you see that Trump lead right now, but you know, we haven't counted most of the votes in Montgomery County. We haven't counted most of the votes in Chester County. We haven't counted most of the votes in Delaware County. And the biggest basket of them all, Philadelphia City and then Philadelphia County around it, the suburbs around it. It's going to be overwhelmingly Democratic, and we haven't counted hardly any of it.
Only 22% of the vote.
We haven't, right.
Philadelphia County is in.
Yeah, it's like you're looking at a football game and just saying, you know, okay, first quarter, end it. It's not the way it works.
I want to check in with Pamela Brown. She's getting some new information on what's going on in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, you're talking about Philadelphia right there, and it's slow going through the influx of mail-in ballots. They've gone through around 76,000 mail-in ballots, and they have a lot more to go. In total, they have around 350,000 to get to. That's according to the city commissioner there. It's the same story over in Allegheny County. That, of course, is another big county there that has Pittsburgh, the home of Pittsburgh. They also have 350,000 mail-in ballots to get through. And in the Philadelphia suburbs alone, you have more than 500,000 mail-in ballots to get to. So I think, you know, as we're looking at this, as we're looking at the numbers slowly coming in there in Pennsylvania, it is keeping us on the edge of our seats, especially in Philadelphia, that Democratic stronghold, John King, where we had 350,000 mail-in ballots they're going through. Right now, though, like I said, they've only gone through 76,000. That is behind schedule than what they thought. They thought by around 8 p.m. Eastern time, they would have 100,000 counted. So they're behind schedule a little bit there. And I'm told by officials they're going to be working through the night trying to quickly tabulate the influx of mail-in ballots that they got there in Pennsylvania. Remember, they just started this morning opening up those ballots. They were way behind compared to other states. They did not get a head start. And Pennsylvania is a state that does not have a history of counting absentee ballots. In Allegheny County, again, where Pittsburgh is, you have 350,000 ballots that they're having to get through there. And I'm told by officials, again, in Allegheny County, they're going to be working through the night to try to get everything tabulated. But one person I spoke to said, look, this is going to keep us in suspense because they just have to work through it through the night, and we may not have a better idea in terms of the total tabulation for those mail-in ballots for a bit, John.
Would we get on the phone from Iowa several years ago, Enid? And we may have to do that again. Look, this is where it gets interesting in the sense that the question is, will everybody have patience? And by everybody, I mean the American people, the people who live in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and the candidates for president, because you know this. Look, so they have all these mail-in ballots. This is Allegheny County. I'll get rid of the numbers here just to remind you. So look, Joe Biden's leading right now at 98,000 votes. The president has 23,000 votes. It's just not, I mean, it's real in the sense that these are real votes, but it's just not contextual in the sense that we know it's a higher turnout election than 4 years ago, and Hillary Clinton won this county with 367,000 votes. So when you see right now Joe Biden leading at 98,000 votes, we are in the early chapter of a very big book because it's such a big state. And so that's the key point. The challenge is, do we get more in the next hour? How long does this take? What do we start to get? Will we hear from the Secretary of State about this is going to go into tomorrow? We already know there were 6 or 8 counties that said they wouldn't even start counting the mail-in ballots to tomorrow. The Secretary of State was leaning on them to get them to try to start today if they weren't overwhelmed on Election Day. And remember, Pam just mentioned Philadelphia. We don't have to. This is not conjecture because we have the words of the President of the United States, who has spent the last couple of days saying he believes there's cheating and there's fraud in Philadelphia. The question is, many of his advisors have been urging him, stay off Twitter, stop talking about this, let this play out. But does the president lose patience as this night goes on?
We're told that in Pennsylvania,
King there and Wolf giving us an indication of the presidential election ongoing in the United States of America, saying those numbers are really tight, very close, but they have to wait until each of those votes is actually counted. Remember, many citizens of the United States actually went for early voting. Millions have already voted, surpassing the pre-election totals in 2016 when Trump was facing Clinton. And something that you need need to keep in mind is that in the United States, unlike here in Kenya, the Electoral College decides the outcome of the election, not the overall popular vote. That is why everyone is watching that number, that small number at the corner of your screen on every state to see who is actually going to take that win. Well, we'll keep you updated even as we go along, following up on the same. For now, let's take a look at other stories making headlines across the world. And the French Minister of Armed Forces, Florence Parly, says Mali needs to accelerate efforts against armed terrorist groups during a visit to Bamako to meet Mali interim government. French Defense Minister Florence Parly landed in Mali's capital Bamako on Monday for talks with the post-coup government on defeating jihadists in the Sahel state. Parly's visit follows that of French Foreign Minister last week, which marked the first visit by a French politician since young army officers toppled President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta on August the 18th. Elsewhere, Tunisian startup is developing a 3D printed bionic hand, hoping the affordable and solar-powered prosthetic will help amputees and other disabled people across Africa. Mohamed Douafi, founder and CEO of Cure Bionics, says compared to what exists on the market, the prostheses we are developing are much smarter because we're trying to integrate machine learning into our algorithm to facilitate the recognition of the user's muscle signals. It is also lighter because it is customizable 3D printing. Primary and secondary students returned to school in Rwanda after nearly 8 months closure to curb the spread of the coronavirus. Now classes restart at the Notre Dame de Chateau High School in the capital Kigali, which reopened after educational institutions nationwide shut on March the 22nd. Thedeo Ndangamira, a teacher, says normally we had more students in the class, but today we have half of what we had before the coronavirus epidemic. It looks like the students were on vacation and they need to be reminded of everything. Some of them remember better than others. Melissa Ikerezi, a student, says, to be honest, I feel a little nervous because it is not easy to come back to school after 7 months of vacation, but suddenly you get used to it and pick up the pace little by little.
The acceleration V delta, V over delta acceleration.
Closer home, Tanzanian police arrested the chairman of the main opposition party, Chadema, as well as other top leaders ahead of planned protests Monday against an election the party said was rigged. Chadema and fellow opposition party ACT Wazalendo rejected results which saw President John Magufuli win a second term with 84% of results and his ruling party take 97% of seats in parliament. Chadema chairman Freeman Mbowe had called for countrywide protests starting Monday, as well as fresh elections. Chadema's presidential candidate Tundu Lissu won only 13% of the vote after denouncing widespread fraud and intimidation of the opposition during the election and following years of repression and jailing of government opponents. Now to something that gives us better perspective on our conversation of the day. Julie Nasuju knows all too well the ups and downs of living with vitiligo, a disease that causes a loss of skin color in patches. Now rejected by her father for being different is just one example of what Julie has had to endure in life. Today, she is the chairperson and co-founder of Royal Patches, a group that offers support for those living with vitiligo and creates awareness on the condition. I spent some time time with Julie and others with this condition, and this is your story.
My name is Julie Nasuju, and I have a skin condition called vitiligo. I've lived with it for over 28 years, and I'm the chair for Royal Patches, and also I'm a model representing vitiligo at the moment here in Kenya. Mainly my idea for Royal Patches was to bring out the beauty in vitiligo. For me, I do not take it as a skin condition, I take it as art. You can just look at the patterns that they form. Some even form Africa, some form so many flowers, love hearts, like I have a love heart on my finger. Some people who have vitiligo see themselves like as a misfit. Like no one can love you the way you are because you have a certain skin condition and it's outward. And the pressure of the way people look at you, you feel like you're a nobody. The aim for Royal Patches is to build their self-esteem, to make people accept themselves for who they are and to see the beauty in it. Mostly the sunscreen, we get it from the government, and that being vitiligo is beautiful carries the big hold of it. Especially Honorable Wangui Njeri is the one who gives out the sunscreen. She's the one who stands in for that. And we've been partners for quite a long time. Most people, when they're told about sunscreen, they're being given sunscreen, they think it's like medicine. It's not medication. It's something to help you to deal with the sun. Yeah, we kind of meet a lot, many of the times, even if it's just to have lunch and have fun. When we meet, actually, I normally tell people, I would imagine right now, if the colonial times, the time white people and black people were segregated, you would go anywhere. Trust me, you'd go anywhere. You have the white skin and you have the black skin, so you'd fit perfectly. Ukiamua kanama blacks, you fit in. Ukiamua kana whites, you still fit in. The stairs kind of affect people more than anything. Because the minute you leave the house, the first thing, you'll either meet with a kid who will tell you, Nini mbaya, some will even stare, some will even run with you, just run in front of you so that they can look at you. Some even call you names, and this thing kind of affects someone psychologically. I remember when I finished school, and the first place I went was a supermarket, and it was an Arab supermarket here in Parklands, and it was a job opening that I was told it's open and all that. I went to ask for a job, and the first thing this person told me, the lady told me, I cannot employ you, infect my customers with what you have. And I'm like, how am I infecting customers and things are packed? I'm not even like cooking. My own biological father rejected me and told me I could never be anything. And that it kind of affected me psychologically. I was like, only how many times will I be told this? And so I decided, why don't I make a turnaround and make something positive? I had to, and for me it was like a trigger. I have to make this person know that I'm someone in this world. And you're not the one who created me, it is God who created me. Even if you were there, God is the one who made sure I'm in this earth. And that's what pushed me to start doing what I'm doing. I started by taking photos, going for video shoots, and the first video shoot I did, like when I landed, the first one was with Sauti Sol, and I was like, hey, the first video shoot and I landed with Sauti Sol, and it's the biggest boy band in Kenya, and I was like, I have a great destiny. If you meet someone who has vitiligo, imagine if you just start with a smile. Don't even like frown or just wonder how you're going to approach it. Start with a smile and just say hi. And then tell them you're beautiful. You're beautiful and wonderfully made. Only that will open up their hearts and they will talk.
And Julie's story gives us perspective about living awesomely different. Well, to help us understand better why we would have this conversation this morning, I have with me in studio Honorable Wangui Njeri, who is living with vitiligo. She'll tell you more about what it is that she does on a day-to-day. In the other studio, we have James Karanja, who is the chair of the Intersex Persons of Kenya, and he'll tell us more about the organization. And joining us from her living room, we are joined by Caroline Njoki-Ng'ang'a, who is living with hyperhidrosis. We'll get to know also what that condition is and what that looks like for her this morning. And let me start off with you, Wangui. I mean, you are living with vitiligo, but before we get to it, let's understand what vitiligo is, if we can have the graphics on air. Well, vitiligo is a disease that causes the loss of skin color in blotches. It occurs when the cells that produce melanin die or stop producing or stop functioning. It can actually affect the skin on any part of your body, including the hair and the inside of the mouth. Now, vitiligo can affect all and sundry, but has no cure and is not infectious. However, treatment for vitiligo may restore color to the affected skin, but it does not prevent continued loss of skin color or a recurrence. Wangoi, this has been your reality all your life. When did you discover something was different about you?
I got vitiligo when I was 14 years. I was in Pangani Girls. I just got a patch on my eye. Then my desk mate told me, you have chalk on your eye. So I told her, let's go to the ladies and check and try to wipe it off. When we went to the ladies, we couldn't wipe it off. So I went to the nurse later in the evening. And the nurse told me she also doesn't know what it is. So my parents were called in the next day. They were told to come and pick me because the nurse could not understand what was going on with me. So we went to hospital the next day and I was told that I was living with vitiligo.
Oh,
yes.
Was this the first time you were hearing of vitiligo?
This was the first time my parents and I were hearing of vitiligo. And the funniest part, after it came to my eye, I was given medication, but then it came back here. So in school, I'd sit like an hour outside the sun and just apply medicine here and here so that it could get a cure. Yeah.
So this was which class in high school?
Form 2.
Form 2?
Yes.
By Form 4, how was it looking like?
By Form 4, I just had patches on the tips of my fingers by Form 4. And now the eyes had and the nose by Form 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now I'm thinking high school, you're going through adolescence, you know how kids can be in school.
Yeah.
How are they reacting to the changes?
In Pangani, they actually weren't discriminative because no one knew what was happening. But I actually tell them it's called vitiligo. I also don't know what it is, but it's called vitiligo. But now when I came out of high school, outside here, it was really hard for me. Yeah, because no one outside also knew, and the stares and the snide words, that would really affect me. And then now when I came out, you see, vitiligo is triggered by stress. So once you get stressed, it starts spreading. So it spread throughout my body when I was around 21. We were still taking medication. My parents were still taking me to hospital. We were still doing the carrot and tomato therapy, but it couldn't work. Yeah.
And when you say you were taking medication, is it oral medication or just applying?
It was oral and applying. But you see, sometimes I'd apply and go to the sun and get, what are they called, blisters. So when you get blisters, it becomes more painful. And so I told my parents, you know, there's no need of me living in pain, yet it's something I can live with without feeling pain. So yeah, I stopped both oral and application of medicine on my skin.
So you do not use anything to date?
To date, since I was 21 years.
Oh,
yes.
So what do you use to protect yourself from the sun?
I use sunscreen, given for free by the government. The government offers it in all level 5 hospitals in all counties. So if someone is living with vitiligo, they can go to any level 5. You see, the sunscreen helps our skin. It protects us from the sun rays so we cannot get skin cancer. If we do not use the sunscreen, we are very prone to getting skin cancer as persons living with vitiligo. So that's why the government, through Mheshimiwa Honorable Mwaura and myself, we were able to fight for us to get sunscreen.
And you mentioned Honorable Mwaura. So what is the difference between vitiligo and albinism? The
difference between vitiligo and albinism you're born with, vitiligo you're not born with. And there are 3 types of vitiligo. Where one is like me, where you're totally fully white. Then there's one where you find just a segment of it. And there's one where it's patches all over your bodies. You see, for albinism, there's nothing like that. And for vitiligo, there are people who, if you have a patch on one side, it will never spread. It will stay like that forever. There are people like myself who it will spread all over your body, and there are people who will remain with patches all over, and it will also never spread again. But for albinism, you're born with. For vitiligo, you're not born with. It just comes at a certain age. It can come at 2 years, at 14, at 90. I visited families where someone at 90 just got it, or 70 or 60. But you're told there's a doctor called Dr. Vanessa from Bagathi Hospital who told us that if you get it at a certain age, like from 70 and above, it's your body trying to fight a disease, maybe diabetes, a cancer, or something of that sort. Yeah.
Okay, you'll tell us more about your experience living with vitiligo in a moment. But before we get to it, the results of the 2019 national census revealed more than just the general population. It was also the first time that intersex members of society were counted. James Karanja was one such person who told NTV's Ngena Kirori his struggles of being born in between and why the inclusion of the the intersex community in the big count now counts for something. Now, before we get the sounds and pictures to that story, let's bring in James. It is good to see you this morning. And when we talk about intersex, let's first define that, if we can have those graphics on air. Well, intersex is a term used when a person is born with a reproductive system or anatomy that doesn't conform to a typically male or female body. Now, intersex children are born with either two sex organs, male and female, or one visible organ, while the other is either hidden, malformed, or deformed, but present. In some cases, intersex traits are visible at birth, while in others, they are not apparent until puberty. Being intersex relates to biological sex characteristics and is distinct from a person's sexual orientation or gender identity. So, James, you were born Mary Waithera many years ago. Tell us more about that.
So, thank you for having me here, first and foremost. I think during the events, or during when I was born, the first 3 weeks, there were not normal events, just that the midwife could not immediately identify whether it was a boy or a girl. And therefore, it took a lot of intervention, and one being, taken to a traditional birth, a traditional medicine man, to help, explain this new phenomena that had occurred. He could not also explain, and he gave two options. One, it's either that I should be killed because I was a bad omen to the society, and second, whatever presumed to be a male was supposed to be chopped off. So, although my grandmother was a staunch Christian, decided that I should be taken to a missionary hospital so that they can help explain this whole issue. And that is why I stayed for 3 weeks, because also there were this consensus: who should we raise this child as? Is it a boy? Is it a girl? Then what are the repercussions if we raise this child as a boy? What happens if we raise this child as a girl? So I think during that time that I was born, there was a lot of confusion and shock to my family, my immediate family.
Okay, James, at what part of life did you realize that something was different about you from the other kids?
So I was in a girls' boarding school, and that was in Form 3. And, adolescence kicks in, and every other girl, they have this big chest. I'm the only girl in a school of 600, and flat-chested. I have broad shoulders. My voice has started deepening. Then I realized something was amiss. And still, from the first day, I was nicknamed as a boy. So, people used to see some sort of difference in me, but my family was still hiding all these stories from me. And, I came to know exactly who I was after I was sent out of school, because, girls were so much attracted to me. They used to send a lot of love letters, and the school thought I was trying to instigate lesbianism. So during that time is when we had the conversation with my grandmother, and the doctor came in and said, it was a mistake, but I still had to go back and finish high school. So I think my ability to know who really I was came in when I was in high school, Form 3, Form 4.
Okay, so we said earlier on that for intersex children, they're born with either two sex organs, and you alluded to the same. So for you, what was predominant is what made you choose to live as James Karanja?
When puberty kicks in, you don't have power, and no one has power over puberty. So one thing that I was raised as a girl was that, African society does not believe in raising a dysfunctional male child, and therefore whatever has some ish will always be pushed towards female. And that was one of the reasons. Secondly, the idea that, you know, within African society, most of us are raised to become good wives. So, you know, all this kind of wearing clothes, you're taught you cannot bathe in rivers, all these kind of things made me to be raised as a girl. And then puberty kicks in, and you realize, for me, I realized that I have a medical condition known as an ambiguous genitalia, and therefore it's just that the biological manifestations of the genitals are not well pronounced as it would be in a boy or a girl. So it's about the best guess. And however, the internal aspect of me are male, and therefore it's not about choosing whether about being dominant or, you know, less dominant. So these are things that are structured, and you cannot intervene because there are normal biological processes happening.
Okay, so James, when did you decide to leave as James Karanja and not Mary Waithira?
So immediately I completed high school, I could not fathom wearing a skirt anymore. I used to feel a lot of discomfort, and so my grandmother and my immediate family members knew this, and they were okay. So I decided immediately that this is me, and from there henceforth I've been James.
Okay, all right. Now you will tell us your experience leaving as James and, of course, making that transition in a moment. Let's bring in somebody else who is joining us on this conversation, and that is Caroline Njokinganga, who lives with hyperhidrosis. If we can have the graphics to understand better what hyperhidrosis is. Well, hyperhidrosis is the abnormally excessive sweating that's not necessarily related to heat or exercise. This disorder is characterized by excessive sweating of the palms, soles of the feet, groin, facial area, or underarms. Hyperhidrosis may be present from birth or might develop later in life. Although not life-threatening, this type of heavy sweating can be uncomfortable because and cause embarrassment and psychological trauma. Well, Caroline, when did you realize something was different about you?
Thank you for having me this morning. I realized I was sweating excessively when I was about 8 years, and I noticed there were some droplets of sweat on my palms. And I thought it was something to do with the fact that I was unwell, because I think I had pneumonia at that age. But I recovered and realized the sweating was not going away. And I've lived like that. And then as I grew older, the sweating continued. I realized now the whole hand is sweating, my feet are sweating, and it was hard to wear shoes. My armpits are sweating, my face is sweating, and it didn't matter whether it was a hot day or I was exercising or doing something strenuous. I was still gonna sweat even when I was in bed. And that came with a lot of issues, because maybe like in school, when you're writing, you sweat on your books, or you're greeting people and they realize your hands are wet and they are cold. So, you know, as I grew old, it just became worse and worse and worse, and now it's more clear in different parts of my body.
Okay, and when did you get the diagnosis?
Actually, I wasn't diagnosed. I started Googling, and I, just Googled what excessive sweating, and I learned it is called hyperhidrosis. But I did go to see a doctor once, but I was misdiagnosed. The doctor argument was that my body is localizing sweating in certain parts of my body. So I was given medication to make the sweating be, to be all over the body, only to realize that is actually not the case. It's a hyperhidrosis, and it has no cure, and it has no, nobody knows why it is there.
And there are different types of hyperhidrosis. Which one do you have?
I have primary focal hyperhidrosis. I'm born with it. It's genetic. Yeah. And I sweat in my palms, my face, my underarms, my laps, and my thighs and my feet.
Okay. And are you the only one in your family with hyperhidrosis?
I realized actually several years ago, my dad also sweats, but his is not so pronounced as mine. He doesn't struggle with it at all. And I have also a nephew who's is mild, very, very mild. I'm the only one who, whose is more pronounced.
Yes. And when did you start to learn to live with this condition?
It could have started in high school. You're becoming a teenager and realize something is off. Your classmates are commenting stuff about you. So I learned to, the shoes I'm wearing, I can't wear high heels. I can't wear open shoes, not unless they have a rough surface, so that even if I sweat, I won't slide off the shoe. I was always in a sweater because I'll be sweating on my armpits, and I don't want that embarrassment. And basically in college, I had to live with a handkerchief all the time so that I keep cleaning my hands when I'm writing and everything. And I have had to adjust my wardrobe and drop some lifestyles, like being involved with the people. So it's been a progressive process. And you will get to tell us more about your experience living with hyperhidrosis. Let me get back to you, Honorable Wangui. Today we call you Honorable because you lived beyond vitiligo and are awesomely different and have been able to achieve so much. But before you got there, there have been obstacles in between with people looking at you different because you look different. Tell us some of those experiences.
Like I told you, in high school it was quite different from the outside world. So when I got into campus, it was quite hard for me. I had to go to school and hear people shout some very not good words. Like the times I've been called a monkey, the times you're told, did you steal someone's husband, or you poured for acid? I had to go through all that when I was in campus. And I remember after I finished campus, I got a job in a bank, but I decided to leave because no one would come to my counter. So, because you see, then I was dotted. I hadn't turned fully white. So I was dotted. I was brown, and I was your skin tone. So I was brown and white. So most people were afraid to come to my counter. I remember just waking up one day and leaving and decided, you know what, I can't do this. And I went to someone and I told them I wanted to be a youth leader in any county. So I was told, since I come from Nyeri County, I can go and be a youth leader in Nyeri County. That's when I decided to join politics. And I became the photographer for Mount Kenya region then in 2012, 2013. And that's how I ended up in politics. And but the world out here is crazy. It's really crazy. People have a lot to say about you. And it's taken a lot of courage to be able to walk each day without listening to what people say. Then I was young. I was just 21 and 22. And you can imagine a 21 or a 22-year-old living with vitiligo, and you also don't know what you're going through. So I remember even in campus, I had to change my class from daytime to evening so that I don't have to meet with people.
Okay. And in your story, you have told before that it got really bad. It affected your mental health. And at some point, you contemplated death by suicide.
That was when I was still 20s. I remember I never used to come out of the house. When it got really worse, and I'd tell my parents, now what do I do? Because people kept saying things. You see, you even start asking God, what did I do to you to get this? Like, why me of all the people you are over, I don't know how many million in the world, but why did you have to be Wangui? Like, those were the things I went through. But during that period, I was also taken for counseling. My parents took me to counseling, and after counseling, I believe it helped a little, but also counseling doesn't help too much. I think it takes personal strength just to wake up each day and tell yourself that you're beautiful, and to look yourself in the mirror and just say, beyond and above everything, even living with this condition, I'm still beautiful. It may not be painful. People may say things, but I still consider myself very beautiful. But it also took 8 years for me to reach that point of where I have accepted myself and I'm willing to live with this condition just the way I am.
Now, Julie mentioned that with this condition, you literally, every single morning, the moment you open the door, you're reminded that you're different because people look at you different.
Yes.
What does that do to you?
It's hard. There are good days and there are bad days. There are days you just want to stay in bed and just sleep the whole day. And there are days you want to wake up and go conquer the world. So the days are different. There are good and bad days. There are days where people don't notice it and they notice it. And there are days when you walk out that door That's all everyone notices. Yes. But like Julie said, it takes strength, and most of us living with vitiligo in Kenya haven't reached that point. So we have support groups where we help each other, just encourage each other. We have WhatsApp groups, we have Facebook pages. We just encourage each other and tell each other, you know, despite and in spite of living with this, when someone stares at you, stare back at them. They'll stop staring at you. Seriously, if you stare at me and I stare at you, you'll stop staring at me.
So let's size each other
down. Yes, let's stare at you. One of us has to stop staring at the other. So, yeah.
Okay, and when you talk about your support system, your parents clearly were very instrumental, still are instrumental in this. Have you seen parents who struggle with children that have vitiligo?
My Facebook page is full of that. There are times I turn it off. I'm just like, I don't want to see this. I don't want to hear it. You'll see parents come and just send you messages. They're like, you see, I've just realized my child has vitiligo and I can't believe it. I don't want my child to have the vitiligo. I don't want them to live like you people out there. They're going through so much trauma. You'll find parents who haven't accepted it and are not even willing to accept it. Even when you send them to I normally send them to Dr. Vanessa at Mbagathi because she normally deals with kids living with vitiligo. So even if you send them there, they'll go. But you see, for a child, Dr. Vanessa will clearly explain to you if it starts on your eyes, on your nose, on your ears, on your lips. It's quite hard to treat that. So when you tell a parent who's also going through a lot of stress that, they come back to your page and they still say that they don't want their children living with that condition. Most parents out there have not. You'll find they haven't accepted that their children have vitiligo. Even when you try to tell them it's not a bad thing, they're not in pain. And you know, later on in life it might just go, especially for a child. They still do not want to hear it. They want an immediate cure, which is quite hard to find. Yeah.
Okay, you'll tell us more about that support system. As we said, Royal Patches is one of those support systems out there for those living with vitiligo. And let me put to perspective something that James mentioned, that the parents were in crisis and they did not know how to bring him up as. And there is another family member, if we can have that story, where they were blessed with a son, but when they went to see their child, they realized something was different. Here is their story.
Celebrations to mark the Intersex Awareness Day were held in Embu. This is a day designed to highlight human rights issues faced by intersex people. The Kenya National Commission on Human Rights has called on the government to fast-track documents designed to include intersex as a gender. Kenya became the first African nation to recognize and count people born with a sexual anatomy that does not fit typical definitions for male or female bodies as part of its 2019 census in August. The results showed that 1,524 people were intersex, a figure campaigners said was low.
I'm Peter Maingi, the father of 3 children. Firstborn is a girl, secondborn is an intersex child, and thirdborn is a boy. I was happy, expecting a boy. The wife asked the lady who was helping, the private parts looks ambiguous. But the information was, it's just a condition we call undecided testicle. It will be okay. One doctor referred us to our national hospital so that they can check well. The result shows our child has undecided testicles on the right hand, and the left side is not identified. Surprisingly, during the surgery, I was later called. I found my wife had collapsed. The most shocking news that I'll never forget, that our child is not even a boy, it's a girl. They said you need to do another test, which is known as karyotype. So we opted for South Africa. They tried to rectify the penoscrotum so that the child, because my child has what we call a prostate, so they thought this would be a boy. So finally they could not manage the condition, and this is now the conclusion that came, that our child is intersex. Our child cannot urinate normally like a boy. So in school they used to bully or even laughing at him. And then the second school that I took my child, surprisingly my child is extremely very bright. I've spent over 4 million with this child since he was young on the issue of medical. Trying all the hospital, you think they are the best in this nation. My wife told me there are people suggesting culturally it's a curse. So the best option is just to kill our child and forget about it. I was also told to divorce my wife because this is a curse. Maybe that family is cursed. But I said I will never. This is a point where a man, you stand like a man and help your family. Our child now, who is 9 years, though he doesn't want to share it openly, but he knows the intersex, we had thought we'll never have another child because I don't want to undergo this. But the grace of God, God gave us the last born, who is a boy. Imagine your child asking you, will I be like this? Will the doctor help me be like this? To be normal like Kiana? And then you can imagine what a pain. Then you tell me, yes, my wife also got a hypertension because of the condition. We are also hoping the Ministry of Education will do something that will help these children and also create awareness so that nobody should ever bully an intersex child.
The story of Peter Maingi puts to perspective how difficult it is to live as an intersex person, but also how society views you. And speaking of which, James, you said growing up there was a lot of confusion. When you look back and talk to your parents about this, what are some of the suggestions they were given by other people in how to deal with your situation?
So I think I had a very peculiar life while growing, because during that scenario was that there's the naming ceremony that happens, and my father believed that in his family there was nobody born like me, so there was a lot of pressure on my mother, and their marriage broke. And for a very long time I was raised by my mother alone, but an issue happened when I was approaching adolescence or puberty, because everybody, I think they were praying that I should be a girl, but things were going on the opposite direction. And my mother could not handle that, so she went through stress, acute depression. So she is mentally challenged for having an intersex child. So I wouldn't say that I had that good conversation with her on, how they raised me. But for a very long time, almost the whole of my life, I was raised by my grandmother. And it was not an easy life for me because, being raised by a grandmother, she expected me to do things like a girl. And I was so much against it. For example, if she would send me to the river to fetch water, I used to refuse carrying it on my back. So I was carrying it on my shoulder like other boys in the village. And my grandmother was like, I am expecting you to be a good wife. A good wife in future cannot be carrying water using shoulders. So you must set a good example. So I think my life was not that easy. There was a lot of conflict, especially on the gender roles.
And when you were growing up, you said in high school there are people who did not understand why you were different. How did you face other children or other adolescents saying that you were different from them?
So I think from the very first day that I joined, I was in Kampala Girls High School, is in Molo, and I used to wake up at 3 a.m. So the first day it was instinct, there's something very wrong with me. And immediately that everybody was like, there's something wrong with you, but we don't know what it is. So, that idea of everybody telling me I'm different stuck in my head. And the first day I woke up at 3 a.m. Then everybody wakes up. In a girls' school, it's 5 a.m., everybody throwing clothes all over. And then I looked at people and oh my goodness, there's something wrong. So, from there, I was very, very, I was taking things very cautiously. And other than that, there was some sort of attraction. So these girls used to love me so much to a point that I became the assistant head girl and I became the head girl. So, for once, I misused the power because, being as a head girl, nobody will ask you, why are you not washing with us, in these bedrooms? Yeah.
So you used to wake up at 3 a.m. to take a shower before everyone else?
Exactly.
Okay, so you came out into the world, you said you decided to go with James Karanja, but your birth certificate reads Waithera.
Yes.
How does that look like for you in the outside world?
It was not an easy thing because immediately I completed high school, I thought things would be very easy. And the first thing that I tried was getting an identity card. So I go with the birth certificate, and everybody in that office tells us, I mean, this is an original birth certificate, but whoever is presenting is a different person. You're a male, your body manifestation is that of a male and not of a woman, and yet your birth certificate is female. So from there I resorted to correcting an identity card. I think the guy was from Nyakach. So I was using a false identity because, you know, I couldn't even access simple services like an M-Pesa because everybody thought I was an imposter. And so I stayed for 6 years, but those were quote-unquote hell years for me because the society knew me as Mary Waithera. Then here comes is James Karanja. They want to know, is this James Karanja? And I was undressed in public. And when like people got to the bottom and realized what was happening, they were very sorry. But you see, the mess had already been done. Yeah. So I contemplated doing, committing suicide 3 times. And even today, I've never understood how they were never successful. But the last, attempt was like a wake-up call for me because I realized it's for me to change who I am, accept myself, and the society will accept me. But it cannot be that the society accepts me and yet I hate myself. Mm-hmm. So after that, I joined university, and it was a bit hell. I was sent out of an exam room because, I'm Mary Waithera, I'm wearing a suit. It has never happened. And I have never, accessed some of things like library in the university. Because, the security guards were always, why is your school identity card? Then you gave, it's Mary Waithera. You are not this person. Why, Mary Waithera, and you're even having beards. So, it has been very stressful. Wow. But I've learned to cope with it.
Okay, and you'll be telling us more about your support system and how you came about to be the chair of the Intersex Persons of Kenya. When we come back, we will hear more from Caroline Njoki on her experience of living with hyperhidrosis. Remember, we asked you earlier on the question of the day, do you live with a health condition that makes you feel different from other people? Could be vitiligo, cancer, hyperhidrosis. Remember, some of these things just make us stand out. Or are you going through a rough patch in life? Remember, what we're trying to learn here is we're listening to people who have health conditions that they cannot live beyond or without. It has to be part of life. But you, with a circumstance that is just passing by, seasonal, what can you learn from them? We'll be right back.
Change can be disruptive, but Business Daily has got you covered from Monday to Friday. Get evolving trends, ingenious business ideas, and the latest tech content in the new market dynamic, and exciting lifestyle content in the new normal environment. Business Daily. More possibilities.
What are the most beautiful things in life? Are they people, places, or memories? You see, there is nothing more exciting than hearing a story for the very first time and being inspired.
I feel like social media and what is shown has become a catalyst for depression.
The reason why we have such things as depression is when you say, I have come to the end of the world.
You brought the pieces together, made me that storyteller.
So join me right here on Unscripted with Grace on NTV every Saturday at 8 p.m.
We are Nation, Africa's independent media brand. We are committed to empowering all Africans, from the young to the old, from the curious to the educated, and from the heart of the cities to the rural areas. We are Nation. Join us, because if you want to get far, you do it together. Nation. Empower Africa.
Thank you for staying with Your World. My name is Gladys Gashanja. Today we're celebrating being awesomely different, even as we learn a thing or two about certain medical conditions. Still with me in studio, Honorable Wangui, who lives with vitiligo. In the other studio, we have James Karanja, who is an intersex person, and we're also joined from her living room by Caroline, who lives with hyperhidrosis. Remember, we are here to understand what it is to live with these conditions that you can't put a pose on, and maybe you can also drive, or rather derive lessons from their stories as to how they still live a full life despite the circumstances, and actually use that to give you the strength you need to overcome your current circumstances. But before we get to it, remember, this morning, or actually nighttime for the United States, it's election night. Those votes are coming in, and the polling stations definitely closed by now, and vote counting is ongoing. So far, from that CNN report, we are saying that Joe Biden is leading with 50% of the votes. That is 57,682,488 against his opponent. That is President Donald Trump, who is standing at 48.5% of the vote, which is roughly 56,005,142. Let's listen in.
It's not there yet, but that would be the flip, right? We're looking at this map right now. We're starting to fill it in. Nothing has changed from 2016 as of now. So both campaigns sort of in their building blocks. This is where they figured you would be. Now, again, the Biden campaign was hoping, right? Hoping for an opportunity here, an opportunity here, an opportunity here. We just took one away. They thought they had a chance. Remember, Joe Biden went to Cleveland Monday morning. Closer, a lot closer than it was last time, but a Trump win there, we project. And so you're looking at this map. So this one, they're leading in. That's a Clinton state they expect to get. So again, in the Biden campaign, you came into the night dreaming of getting this. Doesn't look that way. We still have some votes to count in Texas. But so if you take off the board, let's not count on that anymore. Take that off. We're still waiting. Take that off. Take that off again. We're back here where we knew we would be. And the question is, what else can change the math, right? So which, do you need the big one? Can you do it with the 26, 16, and 10? 16 Michigan, 10 Wisconsin. This is, you're sitting there now with your sheets, or that's all done digitally now. But some people like old school, even in the campaigns. They're sitting there with their paper, and they're going through this because you got one in the congressional district here, you got one here. The question for Maine, we haven't done Maine yet. I mean, Biden can pick some up in Maine if you turn this off and come here. The question is, do you get them all? I'm in the wrong thing there. There we go. You know, do you get them all, or do you just get, does the congressional district go back and forth? So that's where the interesting math is now. And normally, in a big race, it doesn't come down to this, right? You're not worried about one congressional district there and one congressional district here, but we have the potential to be in that. You know, for challenge for Biden now is make sure you hold Nevada, clinch Arizona, and flip it, and then you get into the then we get into the math as we go later through the night. And the issue is going to be keep checking in on Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin to find out how much more are we going to get tonight, how much more will we get in the middle of the night. I think in all three states we're likely to be having a tomorrow conversation, and the question is, what else do we get? Do we get everything else? And then, so where's the math when we go into the weight on these? And that's the calculation back and forth. And guess what? If you go into tomorrow, just without a doubt, then you're talking about lawyers, contested fights. Some of them perfectly normal, some of them perhaps outside of normal, because we've heard the President of the United States say repeatedly he thinks you should be able to finish counting an election tonight. It's not the way it works. It's just not the way it works. It never works that way. It was not going to work this way from the beginning this year because of the complexities of the pandemic voting. But it is one thing to watch. The president signaled he was going to do it. We're now at 12:06 a.m. on Wednesday. He has not done it. That's good. That's good. We should let the process play out. But as we get through this later, let's just see.
And in all three of those battleground states, the so-called blue wall, so much of the outstanding vote are the early votes, which were skewing Democratic.
Right, they were. And again, I didn't have, Rhode Island still has not been called on that map, too, which would be a couple of votes for Biden. Let's bring it over here. And just to look, and again, you know, at this point, to people at home who've been watching all night long, this is getting a bit redundant. But as people tune in later in the night, it's just important to keep saying this. If you look at this map and you think it's after midnight, 56 to 42 in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, at first glance, you think, wow. But then think about it. Pennsylvania, no matter who wins Pennsylvania, it is not going to be a 14-point race in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. That's just not going to happen. So what does that tell you? That this is an incomplete picture. Every vote in here is a real vote, but it's an incomplete picture. And so you look at places where the president is doing well, 72% of the vote is in here in Lancaster County. Very important to the president. You move up here to Lebanon County. It's a smaller county, but this is where the president, you know, this is where the Trump magic is running it up in these smaller counties, building 20,000 votes here, 10,000 votes there, but 95% of it is in. So if you're looking at this map right now and you're thinking, if you're a Democrat, okay, a lot of these Trump counties, a high percentage of the vote seems to be in, but come over here to this part of the state. Bucks County, 53%, so we're making some progress there. Biden holding the lead.
Analysis there from CNN's King and Wolf, even as a follow on those polls that are coming in, or votes that are coming in the U.S. And remember, it is election night, and they are looking at the overall polls. But remember, in the United States, the person who carries the day is the one who wins the Electoral College. So in this case, both Trump and former President George Bush actually were elected to office without winning the most votes, so it is still too tight to call, and that's why they are saying it is important that both candidates wait it out and everyone else to see who will emerge the winner. We shall be here to let you know how that pans out. Now back to our conversation of the day, being awesomely different. Before we went to break, I mentioned that we're going to hear from Caroline, who lives with hyperhidrosis. So you spoke of discovering that you have this condition, and here you are, a lady growing up amongst other ladies who are wondering what is different about you. Tell us some of those experiences.
So basically, mostly it was interaction, where you have to shake hands in school, you know, hand over stuff. That was hard because of this sweating. My hands are always cold, freezing cold, regardless of the weather or the time of the day. So when you greet someone, your hands are cold and they are wet. So at first you ask questions, umetoka kwa maji? No. Why are they wet? And then, you know, I tell them I'm sweating. So what hits their mind is like, ni ile sweat ya kawaida ya armpits or something like that. So somebody will wear a disgusted face. And actually remember, you know, one of my classmates told me point blank, I never want to shake your hands. You know, you're sweating in your hands. So such remarks were really bad. And, you know, and then also sweating on my blouse, and it is showing, even if it was white, you could still see a wet patch. So that made me shy away from, like, you know, interactive process, you know, like sports. I used to hide somewhere during games and read my books and everything. And I grew as an introverted person because that was hard. Interacting with people was hard. And then in primary school, I used to go, play as a kid, as a child would do. And then I'll collect all the dirt outside. Then when I come back and I'm writing, now the sweat washes down all the dirt. So my books were always dirty. And I used to get into trouble with my teachers because they are like, Caroline, you're not a dirty child. What's up with your books? For me, I knew what was going on. So I retreated from playing. So I'll just go roaming in the field so that I don't have to answer questions to my teachers. And of course, that has continued as growing up. In college, of course, that was even more harder because I went to a rather warm place. And of course, now that just makes things worse. Because when it is hot, you sweat more because naturally the body wants to be cooled down, so you just sweat more. Then you become anxious because you're sweating, and that just makes things worse. So I had to adopt so many things, to explain to people why I'm sweating, why my hands are cold, what's the name of that condition. At that point, I didn't even know what it was. And it was just so hard because I didn't know exactly what was going on. I hadn't met anyone like me, and it was hard just being alone. But I thank God in college, coincidentally, my best friend had the same condition. But for her case, it just seemed to keep decreasing as she grows up. At 19, it was decreasing. At 21, it was decreasing. It wasn't as bad as mine. But at least having her around, it really did me a lot of good.
Okay, and that was definitely a good support system. But you also have a twin sister who does not have hyperhidrosis. Yeah. So who else is your support system?
No, okay, my twin sister does not sweat. We are fraternal twins, so she's definitely different from me. But my family has been very, very good to me, honestly speaking. Of course, they made jokes at some point in my life when I was young because they too didn't understand what it was. But nobody judged me at all, at all. They allowed me to make the decisions that I needed, regarding what I wear, regarding living a less social life. They have been very good to me. And when I explain to them, I can't do this because of this and this, they are very nice to me, and I thank God for that.
And you said you found a way to live with it. So normally, how do you control it, so to speak?
Okay. First of all, I learned to accept myself, because that is the number one thing you have to do. If you don't accept yourself, it's just going to create a lot of anxiety in your mind. So accepting that I have this condition has been very, very good for me. And learning from others. Thank God we have a Hyperhidrosis Awareness Kenya, a non-profit organization and a support system where you meet people like, people with hyperhidrosis, and they share their life hacks. For example, I have to live with a handkerchief throughout my life because, like right now my hands are sweating. I have to keep drying my hands like this, dry my face. And, like in college, I used to walk around with a face towel all the time so that I clean my feet. Because you're walking, you're sweating. I get a tap, wash my feet, wipe them, or I'm walking, just wipe my feet and walk around and change my wardrobe. I have to wear dark colors. I can't wear, certain colors because it's going to show. And I remember I had the one embarrassing moment in college. I had a chiffon skirt and my thighs were sweating. So I stood up from class to go pick a call, and my skirt was wet. And coming back, my best friend is like, Caroline, your skirt is wet. That was really bad. But I thank God she stayed with me until everybody left the classroom, and we just found just a way to get back to that room, without more embarrassment. But I've had to learn from that, change my wardrobe and wear something that is not going to compromise me.
Okay, so at this point, I'll ask you, have you tried out dating?
Pardon?
Have you tried out dating?
Yes, I have. With both good and bad situations. My last relationship was terrible because my boyfriend then didn't understand what was going on. Even if you try and explain to him, like, I have hyperhidrosis, I saw it. He wasn't comfortable with that. And, physical interaction that I had to limit kabisa. I was okay with us talking on the phone rather than meeting. Wow. And that was not good because you expect this person to understand you and they don't. And okay, for some reasons it ended, and I thank God. But now I have a very, very understanding man. And we are planning our wedding actually in December. Oh. He's a very good man. He supports me. Yeah, and he goes a step to learn more about hyperhidrosis so that he can learn more how to support me. And it's been such a good journey for me. I can tell that.
Congratulations on your engagement,
Thank you
Caroline.
so much.
And I'm sure that
Thank
is
you.
such an encouragement to others that live with this condition that are listening to
Yeah.
you. There's a light at
Yeah.
the end of a tunnel for sure. Now,
Yes,
speaking of
exactly.
which, let me pose the same question to you, James. With your circumstances, how has dating life been?
I mean, that's a very hard question. I don't know whether... Can I skip it?
Okay, fine. We shall let it be. We shall let
Thank
it
you
be.
so
But I
much.
can imagine it has been a complex one. And for you, Honorable Wangui?
It's been good and bad. And like I said last time, when I got vitiligo, I had a boyfriend. So when it started appearing, he said he doesn't know what is happening. What is happening with me? So he left. So he left me at my most vulnerable time. But I adjusted to it too. I was in hospital for 3 months because I couldn't understand why someone would leave me just because of vitiligo. And I couldn't understand why they wouldn't stay with me and learn what vitiligo was. Yeah.
Okay, now we talked about the support system, and one of them is actually the Royal Patches that we talked about. Through that organization, what are the kind of people you have met, and what kind of help do you offer those living with vitiligo?
Actually, I'm just a member of the Royal Patches, but I started the Vitiligo Society of East Africa in conjunction with Vitiligo is Beautiful. The kind of help we offer is creating awareness and going to meet families and giving them sunscreen and just encouraging them and telling them, you know what, vitiligo is beautiful at the end of the day. And we do this, I do it with Julie as well. So we visit families once in a week or twice in a week when I have time. I go out to families, I talk to them, I give them sunscreen, I encourage them. If I'm not going to families, I go to schools where I've been told there's a child living with vitiligo. We go and speak to the students in those schools and just tell them vitiligo is a condition. Do not stare at this child. Do not say bad names to this child. So that's the kind of support you give at Vitiligo Society of East Africa, and Royal Patches included too.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what are the gaps you see in society in as far as living with this condition is concerned?
The gaps is the awareness is not yet as much as it wanted to, but we are trying to work in conjunction with the government and the National Council for Persons Living with Disability to create more awareness. Like you see, for the previous years, they've been able to fund us to do activities on World Vitiligo Day, which is on June 26th, where we, last year we had football, the other year we had tree planting, and we called different people to just come and join us, people living with other disabilities, people from normal kinds of lives, to just join us and create awareness about vitiligo. And we hope, let's say by 2022, we'll have created a lot of awareness about vitiligo so that we can stop the stigma that comes with it. You see, like, you'll find most people living with vitiligo don't have jobs. They'll come to you, people have degrees, they have masters, but they don't have jobs. And when they apply, they don't get it. So
Because of how they look like?
Yes. It's just because of the way they look like. That's the biggest problem. But we've also been working again with the government, and I've been trying to push for different positions for different people to be able to be employed by the government, because that's the easiest way to get jobs through the government, because the government actually supports persons living with vitiligo. Yes.
And they are considered in the disability bracket, right?
Yeah, we had this discussion back in 2014 with the then former PS, Susan Mochache, who's currently in health, and she told me that vitiligo had been considered as a disability under the UN chapter. So now we have to register persons living with 90% vitiligo, because of course if you have a naughty that will be just taking advantage of the situation. So we register people who have 90% of vitiligo. This is to enable them to be able to get sunscreen. You see, you cannot go get sunscreen if you do not have a card. So you have to have the card to get the sunscreen, and you have to have the card to get the basic amenities that the government offers to persons living with different disabilities. Yeah.
Okay, and for you, James, in the position of the chair of the Intersex Persons of Kenya, how do you help others who live or walk in the same shoes as you?
So we have more like 2 programs. The first one is it's that program that is based on parents, because giving birth to an intersex child comes with a lot of societal pressure. Comes with a lot of legal issues and also medical issues. one of the things is that we like parents to see adult people who are like their children, and we try to get to the base root of the whole issues. For example, language we use. You see, intersex is relatively a new term, probably in late 50s. But before that, even today, most of the medical literature calls intersex people as hermaphrodites. So, I mean, hermaphrodite is a synonym for the intersex person, or the word intersex. I mean, the other program is towards intersex youths. These are people who are unable to meander through puberty, because, you know, if you've been raised as a boy at some point and during puberty, then you grow breast, how do you explain this to the society? So we come in and try to help these individuals by offering psychosocial support as an organization. We know it's always challenging because, you know, being in a society that expects you, you know, you are a man and therefore you shouldn't be getting monthly periods. But here you are, you don't know even how to use these sanitary towels, yet you getting these menses. So we come in and try to humanize that, or those intersex youths.
Okay, that sounds like such an intricate process. Do you have psychologists and counselors that work with you?
Very few, because still it's hidden within the medical fraternity, the whole of intersex literature. It's only that after the doctors are done with the surgeries, then they, you know, throw you to the society, and the society decides to deal with you. So there's very little even within the psychology and sociology explaining who the intersex people are.
Okay, all right. And Caroline, you mentioned the Hyperhidrosis Awareness Kenya team. How do you help, or how are you a support system to others that live with this condition?
First of all, HAK is a support system to those living with hyperhidrosis. You know, we have a platform where you can just, you know, talk about your struggles, what you're going through, and everything. And also we try to reach out to people who are, you know, speak a lot about hyperhidrosis. For example, this Friday on 6th, we'll be cycling to Laikipia, just a part of creating awareness. And, you know, giving people information about hyperhidrosis, publishing information about hyperhidrosis. That is basically what we've been doing, you know, as HAK. And, you know, our ambassador has been working very hard to ensure we have products and treatments that can help us, you know, tropical treatments that help us survive with hyperhidrosis. You know, those products, most of them are not available in Kenya, so we have to ship them from abroad, and they are a bit pricey, but I thank God they are now available to us. You know, there's some products for the palms, for the armpits, for the face, your feet, so at least, you know, just to try and make life easier for us.
Okay, and how can somebody be part and parcel of this team?
Oh, okay. On Facebook, we are HAK Limited, Twitter and Instagram. You can reach us through there, and we also have a website, Hyperhidrosis Awareness Kenya. If you just Google that, you're going to get us.
Okay, now there's something that I'd like to now stand out of this conversation, because all we've talked about was leading to this, being awesomely different. In your case, Caroline, you actually have a day job as an online writer, right?
Right, yes.
Which means you lived beyond the challenges of living with hyperhidrosis. Talk about that.
Yeah. Well, basically, this condition can affect how you work. We've had cases of people who dropped out their, you know, offices or work because they can't deal with the stigma they are getting at work. Because you find most of us opt to work in jobs that where, you know, you are behind the curtains. And that has been the case for me especially. I find it more comfortable, you know, working in my house, in my own comfort zone, where I don't have to interact with people, because if I'm going to an office, I have to think about how I wear, how am I going to interact with people, greeting them, and that's a lot of anxiety if you ask me. But we have had people who, you know, work as lawyers, as doctors, but they can tell you it's been hard. But at least, with a support system, with the, tropical treatments, that's how we try and manage and survive. And, talking about your struggles, because that is the most important thing. Being in a family where you're accepted and nobody's, trying to belittle your problem. Because you get issues like, Caroline, there are people with farmers' conditions. Yako simbaya. And, that doesn't help. So, having a place where you are accepted, it's very important.
And as you mentioned earlier, self-acceptance.
Yes, very important as well.
James, let's talk about self-acceptance. When did this happen for you, and how has it been a game changer for you?
So I think self-acceptance came that time that I tried committing suicide, because when I was leaving the toilet, I saw two people passing by who are laughing. And that was a wake-up call for me that even if I had died, their life would have still continued. They would still have passed that place laughing. Then that was for me to look inwardly and realize that I need to work on myself, step up, and decide to change who I am for the better.
And how did you decide to go about it?
So I think I have had a very good people around me, because my high school teachers have always, in fact, they were the ones who called me and told me, we know you are born different, so you need to go out to the public and tell people who you are, because there are a lot of parents who are like your mother, and you need to change. Then I met Honorable Isaac Mwaura. He has been holding my hand, and the intersex community in Kenya. And for example, in 2016, he tabled a petition to recognize the intersex children in the country. And in 2019, 2020, there is a bill that actually in the second reading in the Senate on amendment to the amendment to, okay, it's getting lost. Anyway, but amendment to our legal documentations. So, and also someone whom I'm closely related to, who I refer to as Mother, Honorable Gayadhonu wa Mushomba. So these people have been holding my hand, and I'm happy to say I'm where I am because, they gave me a helping hand.
Okay, and how can somebody reach you if they have a child or are living as an intersex person?
So we have an organization that is known as Intersex Persons Society of Kenya. That is on Facebook. On Twitter, it's at intersex_Kenya. And we give our online number as 0723 886 233. So you can either send us, call us, or send us a WhatsApp message. We'll always reach back to you.
All right. And Honorable Wangui, there are so many people who are looking up to you, the achievements you've been able to accomplish. And today you stand saying, despite living with vitiligo, I have been able to achieve this. Tell us about that.
My achievement?
Yes.
The first achievement is becoming an MCA back then in 2013.
Yes.
That is after I left the bank. I realized there's more to me than just sitting in a bank teller and people staring and not coming. So I decided to go out there and put myself out there and see what the world has to offer. So I was a youth. I used to be in KEMUSO, the Kenya Methodist Students Organization. So I decided to continue with my political career out there. And I became an MCA, and that's how in Nyeri County I passed a bill that offers funds to persons living with disabilities, women and the youth, and the late Nderetu Gachagua actually assented to it. In 2017, I tried the East African Assembly. Unfortunately, I lost with 10 votes. Currently, I'm working with the Micro and Small Enterprises Authority, where I represent women, youth, and persons with disability. And these are people in the Juakali sector. You can imagine how hard it is. So I have to go out there, and they'll ask me, Madam, umefanyika nulichomeka? Now you have to tell them, no, it's called vitiligo. So even me being out there, I've been able to educate people in the Juakali sector who probably didn't know what vitiligo is. They probably now know more. about vitiligo, because when I go, they'll be like, nimeona madam mwingine, unataka kwenda kumwona? And then I'll be like, yes, I'll go visit this woman they're talking about. This is in Nyeri and Nyandarua counties. So what I basically do is just encourage my people, tell them there's more to life. You know, you can't lock yourself up in the house.